Happy February, MilHousing Network fam, and thank you so much for joining us today. Now, we're all familiar with the importance of insurance for most common things like insuring your vehicle or insuring your home. But what about insuring your love? Well, what does that mean and how do we make it happen? Today, we are joined by our wonderful partners from Navy Mutual, and I am also joined by the lovely Ellie Matlock, who is here to share some great insight with us. Hi, Ellie. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So Ellie, for those of us who are new to, the idea or even the term of life insurance, or who maybe do know about it but would love to learn more, can you brief us with some of the general information?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know life insurance can seem like this big, scary thing and this really confusing thing. But one of the beautiful things about Navy Mutual and about what we're going to talk about today is we're going to break it down so it's pretty simple and easy to understand. So life insurance essentially is a way to financially replace yourself, right? If God forbid you pass away too soon, you pass away before all your financial ducks are in a row, it's a way to take care of your family so that as they're going through that grieving time, as they're rebuilding their life, it feels like financially you're still there, right? And then it's also a way to take care of future generations. And we'll get into a little bit of that and how you do that kind of further in the discussion, I'm sure. But essentially what it is it's a way to take care of your family from a financial standpoint. If you can't physically be there to help care for them, how can we make sure that they don't feel the financial burden of you not being there?
It's definitely one of those things that, most people don't want to have to think about it because it sounds like it might be a morbid subject, but it is
Mhm.
something we need to talk about.
Yeah, it's a labor of love, right? Life insurance is a way to take care of your family. If God forbid you pass away before your mortgage is paid off, as an example, and you want to make sure that your family can pay off the house so they don't have to worry about managing a mortgage payment in their budget, you can set it up to take care of them. And every month when they're looking at their funds and they don't have to worry about, a mortgage bill, they feel that protection from you. They feel that labor of love. So yes, it's not like a fun topic to discuss or think about. But it's so important to think about it and just to kind of like take the dive into it, because it's really the way that you are going to make sure your family is okay. If God forbid, just something happens prematurely, right? We all would love to live forever. We all think we're going to live forever, but sometimes that doesn't happen, right? And so it's just about making sure, we're taking care of our family. And even if that's a hard discussion, but that's the beauty of having somebody to walk you through it, teach you about it, and make recommendations, because it can feel really big. It can feel really confusing and really overwhelming. And it's important to have someone just kind of help you through that process.
So as you kind of mentioned, it is nice to have a plan in place, for when that untimely, situation comes around. But as we all are aware, life changes so much, our priorities change, lifestyle changes. In that aspect, what would you advise as far as life insurance goes, and if it's still, the right fit for that person?
Yeah. So there's kind of two things I would recommend. Number one, when you're initially setting up your policy, look at whoever you're talking to, whether it be, someone at Navy Mutual or elsewhere, right? Look at the rep that you're speaking to and look at them really as your advisor. The more information you give them about what you need to take care of for your family, and possibly in the future, what you would need to take care of for your family, the better they can provide you a recommendation. So what I mean by that is, let's say we have a young married couple and they own a home, but they don't have children, right? At this stage, they're having the discussion. They know they need to cover the home, but then they mention, we do eventually want children. You can set up your coverage to plan for that. So you might be a little overinsured for the today, but you're not overinsured for the future. So that just is open and honest with, your agent and the person helping. The other side of it is reassess every 5 years. Is my coverage still appropriate? Here's how much coverage I have. Here are the things that we need to make sure are taken care of. And do they align? And if they don't, call back up and redo your coverage, get more coverage, get less coverage, set it up so that it still looks the way you want it to look. You're not locked anything with life insurance. You can always cancel a policy early and start a new one. You can always keep a policy and add another. So if you do find every 5 years when you're looking at it that there's gaps, you can always add more coverage or change that structure. The last thing I would say, and I know I said 2, but I'm going to go with 3, is set up an annual review with whoever, set you up with your coverage. Annually is probably more frequent than a need is, but it's just always good. Like every year you do your taxes, every year you do your budget. And it's just one of those things that annually just take a look, take a 15-minute call and make sure that it's right. Because if something happens within that 5 years where you need more coverage, you want to make sure you have that taken care of. But if you don't have time to do it every year because life happens, right? Some people don't. At least every 5 years that review. I mean, I look at even just my personal life in 5 years, and I went from being married, 2 homes, 2 kids within 5 years. So it can change really, really quickly.
That's
so
a lot.
Just every year kind of take an at a glance. Yeah. Take an at a glance look. And then if you need to do restructuring, great, but really take that deep dive every 5.
So most people might be like me, where when we hear life insurance, we immediately only think of ourselves and what can we leave behind to those who survive us. But is there such thing as setting up life insurance for a child?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not alone. Many people think like, oh, life insurance, it's me and that's it. And then, when they find out the whole family actually can get, that is kind of a shocking thing for them. So you're not alone in that. But yes, you definitely can set up coverage for your child. And most people, right, when they hear life insurance for their child, the immediate reaction is, well, my child's young, they're not going to die. And correct, right? They 99% of the time will not, right? But it's not so much about, okay, I'm setting up coverage for them for their untimely death. It's setting them up for their future, right? Going back to a previous question, we talked about the young married couple with the house. They eventually want to have children. Even if your child is 6 years old, you hope eventually they'll own a home. Eventually they will have kids. Eventually they'll get married, right? Eventually they'll kind of do the cookie cutter life thing, right? That everyone hopes their children do. And it's just helping them get set up for the future, right? So there's 2 different types of coverage. There's term insurance, there's whole life insurance. If your child's under 18, you'll get whole life insurance for them. If they're over 18, options do open up of term or whole life. And either option is good. It's going to boil down to, what is your budget to set aside for them? What can you afford each month to kind of help them? But there's really 2 reasons that you would want to get coverage for your child and why it would make sense. Reason number 1, like I said, is setting them up for their future. If they're 18 and you get them $50,000 worth of coverage, when they go to buy that first home, $50,000 of that home could already be paid off if, God forbid, they have an untimely death. The other piece is really passing generational wealth. So most of the time, generational wealth does stop at the 3rd generation. And what it does, especially, if you get them a whole life, because it's there for their whole life, it makes sure that your grandchildren will have money left to them. Even if your child has 0 savings, they blow all their money, they have no grandchildren, that policy can be passed to the grandchildren when they pass. So they pass away, the death benefit goes to the grandchildren. So kind of a secondary reason people like to look at coverage for their children is really to set generational wealth.
Now, I noticed you mentioned term and whole life. Again, for those of us who probably aren't familiar, with these concepts, can you go a little bit more into detail for us?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So term is kind of for your temporary needs, and whole life is for your forever needs. So term is therefore if you die, right? If you pass away too soon, if you pass away before all your financial ducks are in a row. And when I say temporary needs, I'm referring to things such as your mortgage, your children's higher education, your income, right? Eventually, you'll pay off that mortgage and you won't have a mortgage payment anymore. Eventually, your children will be done pursuing higher education. Eventually, right, you'll stop working and you won't need that income protection anymore. So it's there for a certain period of time. Term is your more affordable option because it does have an end date, again, because those needs aren't forever. We do expect you to outlive the policy and have those needs, no longer be there for you. And that's why term is really just that temporary, more affordable option, right? Because it's just there as a backup plan if, God forbid, like you passed away too soon. Whole life is there forever because we all have forever type needs. Leaving a legacy for your family, covering burial expenses, covering estate taxes, right? All of those things are there regardless of how long we live. We can live to be 80, we can live to be 105. Those things will be there, right? Regardless of how old we are. Whole life is going to be more expensive because it is there forever, but it's a great way to take care of your family. Most people don't know that life insurance death benefits are not taxed. So if you have a $250,000 policy, your family is getting the full $50,000. So they work best in tandem because we all have short-term needs. We all have forever long-term needs. So they work best together to make sure that, like, hey, when I have a mortgage, I can pay it off. If I pass away before I stop working, my family still has my income. But when I do eventually pass away, my family doesn't have to stress about how they're paying for my burial. They don't have to stress about, did I live too long and use more of my money than I anticipated? Now there's not enough, to pass around. So they do work best in tandem. We call that complete coverage. And usually the recommendation is 75% of your coverage is in term, 25% of your coverage is in whole life, but it's really dependent on your individual situation. And that's where, kind of circling back to a previous question, being as transparent as possible with your agent will help them be able to tailor that for you.
So most of our community consists of military service members along with their spouses and as well as stay-at-home parents, especially if the service member is like active duty or active sea duty. I'm speaking from personal experience in that one. So it's only natural for us to ask, why would it be necessary for, for these families to consider extra or supplementary insurance?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the biggest question that we usually get is, well, I'm a stay-at-home parent. Why would I need coverage, right? I don't bring income. And let me tell you, what you are doing at home absolutely equals an income, okay? Especially if your spouse is active duty and possibly currently deployed, right? What you do, if God forbid you passed away, would have to be outsourced. And let me tell you, it costs a lot of money. There's childcare, there's making meals, right? There's just organizing the schedule. There's, carting back and forth to the different activities. And it costs a lot of money if that parent isn't there to have somebody do that, especially if you're active duty. Like, who knows where you live, right? You could currently live somewhere where you have familial support, but you could move somewhere where you don't. And it's just your family. So it's extremely important to look at coverage for the stay-at-home parent. Just because they don't have a W-2, right, doesn't mean that they're not driving value to the home that does require like financial coverage. The other thing to consider, speaking of active duty, is you do have life insurance through the military. If you've covered your whole family, you have $500,000 for the member, you have $100,000 for the house, you have $10,000 for the children. Most of the time, that's not enough coverage. It feels like a lot, especially when you first join the military and you're young and you're like, wow, $500,000. But the more it gets expensive to live and the more your family grows, it just isn't so much money anymore. So the other thing to take a look at, similar to, if you purchase your own life insurance, doing that 5-year assessment. If you have, a spouse who is a civilian worker, usually the company will offer life insurance to the company, but that's not something that they control. That's another conversation that we have a lot is, oh, I have it through my job. But your job insurance, if you're laid off, fired, if you quit, you no longer have that coverage. You control, and let the supplemental life insurance be the one that you get through your job.
Well, Ellie, we truly appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today and provide all this wonderful insight for our viewers. And if you do want to learn more or connect directly with Navy Mutual as well as Ellie, then please scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can click the link in the caption that will take you directly to the Insure Your Love page.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I love talking about life insurance, if you can't tell. And yeah, if you guys are looking to talk to somebody, my team is ready to help, ready and waiting. Navy Mutual was founded by military members for military members, and our mission is to serve the military family. So that's truly what we're here to do, is help in any way we can, provide information in any way we can, educate. So please reach out if you have questions.
Life insurance is ultimately an act of love, so it's definitely reassuring that even after you pass away, to know that your loved